everybody, and welcome back to another installment here in season 2 of the Fantasy Cast. It's been a while, but we are back with you here. He's Ty White. I'm Lachlan McTagg. We're so glad to have you back. It's been a long off season, but a busy one for the both of us. That's for sure. We've been up to our own fair share of fun, both north and south of the border. Before we get into the episode today, have a little check-in. Ty, what's going on? What's going on in Toronto?
Yeah, Loch, pleasure to be with you. It has been a little while since just before the Super Bowl, I believe, was our last episode, and we didn't even get a chance to recap the Super Bowl. Crazy Super Bowl. Congrats to the Chiefs. Don't like them, but I mean, congrats. And it was a fantastic Super Bowl, by the way, one of the best in recent memory. But I'm doing great, thanks. School year actually for me just ended. Year 2 done, halfway done uni, which is it's kind of, that hits. I mean, it's crazy to think that. It was like this time in my life, I was almost 2 years done high school, looking back at one point, and to think that it's just time is flying by. But it's been fantastic. Around the time when we stopped filming the Fantasy Cast for a little while, I had the chance to do a plethora of broadcasts, which was fantastic for the school. Covered a lot of playoff hockey, fun fact, and actually Leafs goaltender for a period of time, Jed Alexander, for UFT. He played a game for the Leafs. I covered a couple of his games, so that was pretty cool. That was before he won a net for Leafs, but it's just been fantastic. Got the chance to do some televised events, doing some in the summer as well. But Toronto's been nice. The weather's been getting nicer. And just before I pass it back over to you, we got to give a shout out, Nico Athanasopoulos. He gave me a call the other night, Lachlan, in the middle of the Leafs game. Towards the end, I said, he talked to me about Luke Shen for some reason. He said, and I promised him the Leafs win, I'll wear a Luke Shen jersey on the Fantasy Cast. And there it is, right there, the old Luke Shen jersey. He is him. And also shout out to former of our alma mater in high school, Malcolm Osgarden, who's he likes the show, sport of the show, new head prefect. All the best to you, Malcolm. But Toronto's been great, Lachlan. But how are you doing there over in the damn desert?
Yeah, big ups to Malcolm, though, head prefect. That's unbelievable. Back in our prime days of St. Andrews, we were prefects once many moons ago.
Yes.
But it's been awesome here. Cannot complain with the weather. It's been 30 degrees or higher for the last 3 weeks now.
Goodness gracious.
Going on. And it's continuing to creep higher and higher. This is my last week of classes, actually. And again, like you, I've been doing some broadcasting and stuff. I actually had the chance, I know we talked beforehand, to do the ASU spring football game, which was a lot of fun. I was really
huge accomplishment, by the way.
Yeah, I honestly didn't expect to get the call, but I guess they like me enough somehow. So
there you go. They
were
watching the Fantasy Cast. They were scouting you out.
Yeah, clearly. They see I have a face for radio over here, so
threw you on. That's
amazing, man. I thought I'd share the story because it was an awesome day and stuff, and obviously ASU has a new coach in Kenny Dillingham, who, by the way, is 32 years old, I believe.
Yeah, the
guy is just full of energy.
McVay's still younger than him, though.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. He isn't, but I don't think.
McVay's what, like 33, 34?
Something like that. Yeah, it's crazy.
I don't know. Anyway, Dillingham, young guy, great coach, great influence, changing the culture at ASU. You love to see it. But I was telling you also that I wasn't just calling the game the entire time.
Yeah.
There's 3 of us in the broadcast crew. So for the first half, I kind of did the social media realm of things and running down. So this is a thing that like not everyone sees in broadcasting or just any behind the scenes stuff. So, I'm trying to set a scene for the people at home. So, if you scroll on social media, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, and you see a goal or a touchdown or a big 3 being hit by a team, and it's like from a videographer's sideline, field side, ice side perspective. So that doesn't happen magically. So what happened was when we were with Blaze, first of all, we were in the big broadcast booths in Sun Devil Stadium, which were really cool.
Yeah.
Really, really high up there. It's an awesome view. Second of all, Blaze has their own booth, and they have their own like social guys as well who are behind the scenes clipping stuff. So one of the our videographers, who I'm friends with, her name's Sydney, she was down field side, and there was a touchdown that was thrown in the spring game. So I got a text from her saying, yep, I got the clip, come down and grab my SD card. So I then run to the elevator, take the elevator down 3 or 4 floors to the concourse, run down through the seats, down the aisle, right down to field side, show my credentials, get down to the field, grab the SD card from her, run back up, plug it into my laptop, edit the clip a little bit, all while the rest of the people in the booth for Blaze, they're clipping audio. So they're clipping the audio clip from the play-by-play from the touchdown call. So then I get airdropped that audio onto my computer, slap it all in Premiere, match it up, have the Blaze graphic go, send it out to the social team, and they post it on Twitter.
Yeah.
And that was about a 20-minute process.
So that turnaround is something you don't see.
And after I did it, it all like kind of hit me. I was like, oh wow, so that's how it's done.
Yeah.
But usually, like, if I was in that situation, I would just be a runner, or I would just be doing editing. Like, I wouldn't be doing all of it. But since it was a spring game, we were a little short-handed. You know, they don't need your full crew there. Like, it doesn't. Again, spring game kind of thing. So
yeah.
But yeah, that was cool. And then I'm calling my last game of the year this Friday, which will be awesome.
For softball.
Yeah. Last game of the year Friday, which I just got a text for actually yesterday that I was going to do it. So
that's amazing. Well, yeah.
Turn around, do some prep. I have a few things to do this week as well to finish up, so it's still a little bit stressful here, but you know, we're just trying to get through.
I'm over here on summer mode already, pretty much. I'm sorry to don't want to. Well, you have something to look forward to, I guess, there, Loch. But it's crazy. Times are flying by, and summer's here, and that means it's getting towards the end of our fantasy cast season per se. This has been season 2. You know, we're gonna try to do a couple more episodes before we take a little break for summer, and then come back for season 3 in the new year, obviously. But we got a little bit of stuff to talk about today. First episode in a while. Loch, we're gonna go over some free agency. A lot of stuff has happened in that realm, especially recently with some big news. And we'll talk a little bit about the NFL draft. We're recording this on Tuesday night. The draft is on Thursday, and exciting times.
Quick side note as well. This, as you mentioned, we are recording this on a Tuesday. It is currently April 25th, and that is none other than Christian Haggett's birthday.
Oh, the boss! So, wherever you are getting sober at the moment, we wish you the best, and hope you're having a blast. And in Kingston, I assume he's still out there. But yeah, big shout out to Christian. Well, hopefully we'll get him on, before we end up.
Yeah, I'd love to get his 2 cents, but a few things.
So fantastic. Let's hop right into it then, Loch. Let's go over some free agency moves, some big ones. So some ones that happened a little while ago now, relatively. 2 quarterbacks we'll talk about first. We'll go Derek Carr, member of the New Orleans Saints now, as well as Jimmy Garoppolo, member of the Vegas Raiders. Two quarterback moves. Do you like anything about these moves?
I mean, for both, like, obviously Derek Carr gave his heart and soul to that Raiders organization. It just didn't quite work.
Yeah.
Like, they just weren't quite there. So he goes from one fringe playoff team to another one in New Orleans, I guess. Yeah. Like, I don't know.
It's a good way to put it.
I thought maybe the Colts would take a stab at him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe they wanted to wait for the draft and not trust a guy like Derek Carr yet. I don't know. I felt kind of bad for Derek Carr last year as well, because obviously the Russell Wilson trade last offseason, you have a loaded division of quarterbacks in his division in Vegas, and you know, one of them's going to not make the playoffs, and it ended up being Derek Carr. But again, we're going to talk about the NFC South later, though. That division's wide open, so a lot of opportunity for him, because the Saints aren't that bad of a team. It's just they're not like a surefire playoff team by any means.
Well, you never know, as you mentioned, in the NFC South for sure. But I think that especially the disappointing thing with the Carr and the Raiders tenure is that he only got a year with Devontae. I mean, how cool was that to have literally arguably the NFL's best receiver on his game, there for a year, gone. Teammates at Fresno State, they had that connection. But New Orleans, like you said, fringe playoff team, so that's a little bit of an interesting move, but they still do have some weapons out there. Jimmy G on Vegas, that is just, I don't think that's going to do much for them at all. Like, I might be completely wrong saying that. And watch the Chargers lose both games in this year, and Jimmy G
Yeah.
reigning victorious.
Yeah,
but
that'd be
like,
pretty fitting. That'd be pretty fitting.
But yeah, I'm not. I mean, I don't really know where the Raiders go from here.
They're kind of just stuck in this loop of either not quite. Yeah, well, I don't want to say mediocrity because like they're not bad enough of a team to sink into a lottery spot in the draft, but they're also not good enough unless they make significant upgrades or trades to really like contend, especially in a division.
Do you realize what you just said too is exactly like you just said, this is the counterpart of each other. Exactly what happening in the Saints. Like these are the NFC AFC equivalent of each other. The Saints.
Yeah, well they are because less so for the Saints because the division. Yeah. Like that division now that Brady's gone in Tampa and the season that the Buccaneers had in general last year, just not ideal.
Not on par with what they're used to, yeah.
But like you look at the quarterbacks, Mahomes, Herbert, Wilson, Garoppolo. Like
for sure. And Jimmy G's the bottom of the pack. Not to mention, too, the teams are phenomenal as well. I mean, give Denver a good quarterback.
You have to think like Russell Wilson and the Broncos with Sean Payton. They're gonna have a bounce back year. They're gonna have a year that's like gonna be a lot better than the one that was this year. Because I'll tell you, their defense was not talked about enough. I know we talked about their defense plenty, but that defense was not talked about last year enough. And
because they were losing, all the games they were losing were like 13, 17 games, and the defense there like Pat Surtain's like, can I get a little help on the offensive side of the ball?
And the best part was they traded Bradley Chubb to the Dolphins at the trade deadline, so they played almost half the season without Bradley Chubb, who was for a good period of time their most impactful defensive player. Absolutely. And yet that defensive unit was still finding a way to keep teams off the board, but it's just the offense could not score.
100%.
And that's going to change this year. And then obviously the Chiefs are going to be the Chiefs, maybe less so potentially with some of the moves in the offseason.
And you never know. That's what they said last year. They said that last year about the Chiefs. But I hate the fact after the Super Bowl that people were they're like, they wrote us off. It's like, dude, you're never gonna be written off completely when you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback.
They weren't supposed to win more than the Dolphins were, though.
Yeah, that's something people were saying. But honestly, looking back, that's kind of ridiculous. And you know Andy Reid and how good he is. So,
of course.
But that's just one of those things where people way over. And even the Dolphins. I mean, they weren't even playing that first playoff game. They didn't even have Tua in there. I can't even remember the guy's name. I just remember that he actually
Skylar Thompson.
Oh, there was Skylar Thompson, and he played a decent second half, and it was a closer game. But that's besides the point. So we talked about Carr, Jimmy G, and hilarious that Carr goes literally from the AFC Raiders to the NFC Raiders in the Saints. Very similar in terms of teams, but there we go. Jawan Taylor, member of Kansas City, another Kansas City Chief that actually left. You have Big Papa Orlando Brown. Cincinnati got themselves a tackle. The first, I'd say, really good tackle since Andrew Whitworth was there. And
you're not wrong in saying that. And that O-line was improving last year.
Yeah.
We saw that by the way that they played in the playoffs, I think. And down the stretch of the season, Burrow was not sacked nearly as much. And obviously Orlando Brown's a veteran guy. Just we'll see how much we can not we, I guess, but how much the Bengals can get out of Orlando Brown.
100%. Hopefully he can stay healthy for them because, I mean, on paper, that's a fantastic pickup, something that the team has needed for a little while now. And that offensive line, like you mentioned, only getting better. They handedly beat the Bills in the playoffs this year. I mean, that was one of the only games all year, but the Bills really were not in that one from start to finish. I mean, Cincinnati played fantastic. So all credit to them, but fantastic pickup there. Tremaine Edmonds going to the Bears. And when we talk about the Bears, we can also talk about that first overall pick swap with the Carolina Panthers there.
Yeah, they got a great haul. They got a number of picks, including another first rounder, a couple second round picks as well, and then DJ Moore.
Yeah.
Like just
in there now. And Chicago's not looking horrible. Chicago's not.
No, I mean, and you know what? It's interesting because Minnesota is still going to be a really solid team, I think. But I
Yeah,
think that they're not going to quite reach the heights they did last year.
no.
I just don't think it. I just don't think it can be replicated because that Minnesota team going into the beginning of last season, was not supposed to do too much, and then
Yeah,
they just kind of like messed around and did a whole bunch.
they did. And I mean, it's partially because, I mean, that's what happens when you have so many great weapons on your team. They just had so many big players, and namely, obviously, Jefferson. Cook had a pretty good year. Kirk Cousins honestly, he's a good quarterback when he's on his game, but they had a good season. But like we were talking about before, that Bears Panthers, very interesting. We'll get to the draft in just a little bit here, but crazy times when they traded for that in Carolina. Moving up, they're trying to get something done. Moving on, a bit of an Atlanta streak here. We can talk about that. And I've been sending you some posts this weeks ago when the Falcons started making moves. And let
Yeah,
me
this
just
was
say
huge.
first, and I love what they're doing. First of all, we got Jesse Bates, we got Calais Campbell, Jeff Okudah, and Taylor Heineke, and Bud Dupree. 5 names.
Yeah, a couple tackles too from the Saints as well, but those guys won't be impact players. Those are more just so like hold
For
down the
depth.
fort kind of guys.
Yeah.
Like those aren't. I mean, now they're paying them a decent amount of money, but at the
Sure.
same time, you're not going to hear their names a whole bunch. They're just going to be doing the dirty work, like so many players on the field do. But
Right.
I mean, I feel so bad like for Okuda because we talked about this too. Like he was a 3rd overall pick behind Chase Young and Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
And he got traded for he actually was in a pick swap package.
Yes.
So the Falcons and Lions swapped 7th rounders and the Lions threw in Okuda.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not great.
The values, not to mention it's too bad because the Lions are actually, their organization's going in a good place, and they put Okuda out of that. That being said, he's a good player coming out of Ohio State, but
Hasn't lived up to
no,
expectations.
not at all.
It's an intriguing name. We'll see if a change of scenery does anything for him, or
And
if
I
he's,
hope it does,
yeah,
because Lachlan, look
oh
at
my
this
God,
Atlanta defense.
if it does, then it locks down the either side because you have a safety in Bates who's very good.
Yeah.
Very, very good signing. That was definitely Atlanta's guy to go after.
Mm.
But then you have a dual threat on either side at cornerback with obviously the season that AJ Terrell has had this year. Because he was
Same
solid.
draft class, by the way. Same draft
Yeah,
class.
exactly. He was drafted 16th, 15th in that draft. And yeah, again, Calais Campbell, just a veteran leader to kind of guide some of those younger defensive players, and also
100%.
guy can still work, can still move out there.
100. When you're 6'8" and an absolute just monster up the middle, I mean, one of the great defensive tackles of our time, right up there with Fletcher Cox and Aaron Donald, in my opinion. And he's been in the league for a long while now. Going back, actually, used to play for Arizona. That's where he was originally. But I really, really like what the Falcons have been doing, especially with this defense. And you mentioned, Bates. You already had Terrell, Grady Jarrett, one of the fine run stuffers up the middle as well as a pass rush. I mean, the Falcons are doing it. And then you have the exciting prospect of, Drake London with Pitts. Hopefully he gets the ball more next year. They have 2 quarterbacks on the roster now who can both do some damage. I'm leaning towards more Heineke, to be honest with you, just because of his experience. And,
they'll give, I mean, Desmond Ridder will be on a tighter leash, I think.
Oh,
Mariota just wasn't quite cutting it. I mean, obviously they, like, no pun intended, because they actually did cut him, but
God, what an exciting year it was for him, though, just to see him get back out there after probably one of the more exciting Heisman seasons ever at Oregon. And then he was decent when he came to the Titans, actually, but it was cool to see him on the Falcons. But the thing is, it was such a bad scheme, I think, and they need to find a way to get.
But the thing that worries me is, like, Desmond Ridder is, like, kind of similar in a sense, but at the same time, like, he was at, like, that he led a good Cincinnati team that year.
Yeah, he did. But the point is, the Falcons, I mean, they're not quite in the position to get that quarterback yet. I think Heineke personally is a pretty decent filler. He had a good season this year, and I like Atlanta, what they're doing across the board. We talk about your favorite team. Talk about mine for a second, but not for long, because we haven't really done jack. We haven't really done diddly squat.
They're a bit strapped for cap space. Last year is their big off season to do a lot, and they did.
And they did. J.C. Jackson's getting healthy too. Hopefully he'll be ready for the season. But they got Eric Kendricks from the obviously Minnesota Vikings. He had a good year. He's a fantastic linebacker. The Chargers have needed one for a little while, but unfortunately with that, they had to get rid of their only good one on the roster pretty much in Drew Tranquil. And the thing that absolutely kills me about this is that he just marched right over to Kansas City. No hesitation. Loved it. Loved every bit of it. And I don't love every bit of that because that's kind of pathetic. But that's just something that happens. It's the reality of the NFL. Miles Sanders to Carolina. They've had a few weird moves. Von Bell's also going there. And let's talk about now the two biggest ones that have happened, Lachlan. We'll end off with the two biggest ones here. So first, we'll go with the receiver. Odell Beckham Jr. has made his way over to Maryland. He's playing with the Baltimore Ravens next year.
The Ravens' search for their number one wideout continues.
But yeah. So what do you think? What did you hear when you initially heard that? What did you think when you initially heard that trade or that?
Honestly, I mean, good for Odell because he's hauling in a solid $15 million.
Yep.
It's not an insignificant amount against the cap, right? Especially for a receiver too. Like that's solid haul that he's getting. I think he's a good receiver. I think he still has got a lot left. And I think that's a move for the Ravens to try and entice Lamar Jackson to actually want to play in Baltimore still, because I know that's a messy situation with Lamar not really having representation and then him demanding $200 million and the Ravens kind of like tagging him and kind of tying him down in a sense and not really giving him too many options to go forth with. And obviously,
I'm glad you touched on that because that was such a weird thing that happened this NFL offseason.
And no GM's gonna take a run at him. Like obviously, like being a Falcons fan, like Atlanta was one of the teams that it's like, well, we couldn't mess around and try and trade for Lamar, but at the same time, like executives don't want a guy who's just gonna be greedy and not team first, kind of at least somewhat.
100%. Lamar doesn't seem like that too much at this point. That being said, former MVP, still a good player, and OBJ coming in this roster, obviously it's going to sell tickets and jerseys and stuff like that. I assume that'll be one of the best selling jerseys in the league is actually OBJ this upcoming year. But even though in my opinion, he's not a top 20 receiver in the NFL, 15 to 20 receiver.
He's an exciting personality just to be around. I mean, I remember 100%. when he was with the Rams, right? I mean, that's
true, and he did play well for the Rams. Actually, he played pretty well for them. But that's an exciting prospect being with a quarterback like Lamar, and receiving core's got a little bit better. Still have Mark Andrews. So I mean, the Ravens have some great weapons on offense, and it certainly opens up fantasy football possibilities. I mean, OBJ is probably someone who's going to go between the 4th and 6th round in the upcoming.
Maybe the hype gets to some guys and they take him in like the 3rd.
Yeah, and you never know. I mean, it could be. I don't think from a fantasy cast perspective that people should be reaching to get him in the 3rd. But if he's someone who drops to you in that 4th to 6th round, I mean, that's a nice pickup for your team. Someone who definitely has a big upside to him. But I wouldn't say expect that week to week 12-point game, on your roster. I mean, it could be a sporadic.
Well, especially not with Lamar and J.K. Dobbins as well, right? Like those two guys. Lamar loves the RPO.
Yeah, quite literally the best running offense in the NFL.
Yeah.
So it's definitely hard and like if you look over the past many years, except for the tight end position, I mean, what has Baltimore given the world of fantasy football in terms of wide receivers? Not much.
Mark Andrews, and he's a tight end.
Exactly. Except for Andrews, who finished first one year, I believe. I think it was 2 years ago that he finished first. But exciting prospect there. But let's get to the big kahuna, the one that literally just happened. And
it's been like quite official for like a couple weeks, but like it's really official now. It's
yes, for sure.
Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is a New York Jet. Aaron Rodgers is who Zach Wilson will be making his life a living hell every day.
Oh, we got that clip. We have that clip on tape. He did indeed say that. I don't think he knew that Rodgers was coming in, though.
And I saw this on Barstool as well, too, because that's obviously where it all kind of exploded. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers actually liked the tweet as well. when it got tweeted out.
That's
That
amazing.
yeah, so I don't know, maybe some friendly competition, and you know what? Hey, who knows? Maybe Zach Wilson will show a lot of competition with Aaron Rodgers. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, no, nobody knows.
But
And
for Green Bay though, what a haul!
yes.
Oh my goodness! Not only did the Jets literally have Aaron Rodgers dictate who they signed in free agency.
Mm.
He was basically he was controlling that team. He was saying, "I need you to sign these guys."
Mm.
The Jets signed him. Then they gave up a first, 2 seconds, and a couple other picks. And by
Yeah,
the way, one of those second round picks is conditional if Rodgers plays, I believe, 65% of snaps.
yeah.
That's 2 first-round picks.
Essentially is what they're getting. And I mean,
That's 2 first-round picks for a guy who has 1 to 3 years in the tank.
yeah. And who knows? This could, like, not to say that the Jet. Well, obviously, I think if you're New York and people say, I've been seeing lots of comments saying the Jets got fleeced. I don't think they got fleeced by any sense, because you are bringing in, if you look at it on paper, perhaps one of the most talented quarterbacks the NFL's ever seen, one of the most exciting, and one of the
No
best
doubt,
of
but
the
for
generation.
how many but for how many years?
For sure. You mentioned 1 to 3. That could be possible. But I mean, with Robert Saleh and that team, they do have some exciting young playmakers. The O-line's pretty good. Breece Hall's coming back. Fantastic back. Also receiving back as
He's
well.
got his buddy Lazard.
Yeah, Big Lazard. I mean, they have some players, and if the Jets, draft decently as well, I mean, the Jets can be a decent team. And the more exciting thing about this, though, for me at least, is the fact that it's in the AFC East.
New
And
York football.
yeah, New York football. But I mean, like, we're going to see Josh Allen versus Aaron Rodgers twice a year.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Crazy. And then not to mention that Dolphins team too, who's poised to take a step after, they went on that, what was it, 6-game losing streak to end the season, and then they lost in the first round in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like that's, because there was a point in the season that where the Dolphins were looking like the Bills had lost a couple games, and the Dolphins were looking like they could potentially take the East.
100%. And so very, very interesting stuff. Love the fact he's in the AFC East, but big trade there in terms of fantasy football and value. I've honestly, I don't think there's much, or at least compared to what there was last year. I think there's equal pretty much to what there was last year, and that Rodgers was working with perhaps not the most talented group of wide receivers and has a better backfield than he does in terms of receivers, both in Green Bay and now in New York as well. But I don't know. I think it's nice in terms of the world of not fantasy football when we're looking at it, and it's a cool prospect, the fact that he's playing in New York. But certainly one of those blockbuster moments and things that you'll always remember, and I'll certainly remember as a football fan. But really, really cool stuff. That essentially caps our free agency talk for this episode. Lots of good stuff, and talked a bit about fantasy implications, particularly more so with OBJ. Interested to see how that pans out. But Loch, let's move on to something that's happening in just 2 days. I believe it's in Kansas City as well. The NFL draft. Not to mention I forget I think his name is James.
James Droz.
Droz. He's announcing a 3rd-round pick. I think it is.
That's awesome. I love that. He had such a chokehold on the internet during the NFL season. It was crazy.
What happened?
I know oh God, I know, especially here at ASU. I know kids were saying that all over the place here after sports games and stuff. It was pretty bad.
It got annoying pretty quickly, but I mean,
I got what happened when the Blue Jays choked against the Mariners. That didn't feel good. I got what happened when the Bills lost. That really didn't feel good.
Yeah.
It's not a good feeling. I wouldn't recommend it.
I'm pretty sure I got what happened when the Chargers blew that game to the Jaguars.
Yeah.
And, on document, we have a fantasy cast rant about that going back. I'm pretty sure still pathetic. Haven't gotten over it. But let's talk a bit about this first round. Lachlan, it's absolutely pathetic. And last year, if you recall, we also went over the draft board a little bit, and
Well,
this is
last year, if I'm not mistaken, last year we both were in agreement that Aiden Hutchinson was a lock for the
lock for
number one
one. Yeah.
overall pick, and then he went number 2.
Yep. And so
Yeah.
no one knows what's happening. If
I
you're
mean,
a draft
okay.
expert, you
I
don't know
think
what's happening. Oh, do you know
I
what's
think
happening?
I think it's. Would you not agree with me that it's fairly safe to say that Bryce Young is going number 1 to the Carolina Panthers?
I I I think
Would you say that's a safe bet?
that is yes.
And
Or yes.
I think historically speaking, when there's a quarterback at the top of the table, it's safer to say.
Yeah.
Because last year it was mostly like skill positions, like position players, like tackles and linemen, linebackers.
That's and that's when it becomes more complicated when there's no quarterbacks. But the thing that I find pathetic about this draft, especially the mock drafts, like PFF, and I mean it could happen, but I just think
Shout out PFF.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. They have 4 quarterbacks going with the first 4 picks. They have, well, obviously Carolina has the first, Houston second, Tennessee is the third, Indianapolis fourth, followed by Seattle and so on. They have Bryce Young going to Carolina, Anthony Richardson going to Houston. We'll talk about that in a second. CJ Stroud to Tennessee, and Will Levi to Indianapolis. I want to say how, in my opinion.
First of all, bold of you to assume that the Cardinals are trading down from 3.
Yes.
Because that franchise right now is a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
Have you seen their New Jerseys?
They're horrible.
They're terrible.
Yeah.
Their old jerseys weren't great either.
No.
They were pretty outdated.
They have not had they've had maybe one decent jersey in history. And to be honest, I mean we gave them some business this year though. We did go to a game and
I mean, yeah, like but the fans were nice and everything. Like shout out the Cardinals fans, but that's because like they just
shout out the Cardinals Cantina. Shout out the Cardinals Cantina. What a beautiful little place. But yeah, that's via Arizona, that Tennessee 3rd overall. But anyways, you said Bryce Young. The thing I want to talk about Anthony Richardson for a second because I like the Gators. I think this is absolutely ridiculous. Like I mean this guy Lachlan 2 months ago was a 2nd or 3rd round pick.
Yeah,
and now he's going like 2nd overall in a bunch of these mock drafts, and personally,
over a guy like Will Anderson too.
Yes,
Will Anderson could kill a man on the football field.
Literally, and he's one of my favorite players to watch in college football. He's been a beast.
But at the same time, someone's not like the Texans might not take him because they might not just want a quarterback yet.
Yeah, very true. That being said, Richardson, regardless of what team, if he goes in the top 5, which is actually kind of likely at this point, I just think it's ridiculous. He had a fantastic pro day.
I think I predict he's going to go 3 to the Cardinals.
Okay, Cardinals over. Okay, Kyler Murray, bit of pressure there. No one knows, man. But Richardson, the thing is, fantastic.
Or no, not Anthony Richardson. Sorry, no, not Anthony Richardson. I'm saying Will Anderson's going to go.
Oh, Will Anderson. Oh, my bad.
No, Anthony Richardson. No.
Okay, but Richardson for Florida, amazing pro day. What if you look in college? The Gators weren't particularly good over the last couple of years, and not to mention this was a year where he was a starter. But he is definitely a top 5 athlete in the draft. I think he's fantastic, and I'm not saying he doesn't have the smarts for the NFL position yet, but he wasn't historically a fantastic passer in college.
His decision making wasn't
anything to write home about. And then you look at Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, who were doing it at just arguably at better schools against the same competition.
CJ Stroud CJ Stroud is as athletic, if not more athletic, than Anthony Richardson.
With much better decision making
and a good arm.
Same with Bryce Young.
But it's the Ohio State quarterback curse. Like I don't know.
Sure. And the only argument I guess Richardson has for him there is that he wasn't throwing to Smith and Jigba and Marvin Harrison Jr. I guess that's the argument you could put. He didn't have technically as good receivers as someone at Ohio State. That being said, in my humble opinion, Bryce Young and CJ Stroud are miles ahead of Anthony Richardson,
But
considering the
I
fact
think
that he was a third round
I think
pick.
Bryce Young. I think the consensus I've been seeing in the rumor mill, and again, it's the rumor mill for a reason,
Hmm.
is that Bryce Young is far and away the best quarterback in this draft.
Yeah, and working under Nick Saban and all that good stuff. It's certainly an exciting prospect. I think, and it's tough to say because this could be an NFL draft. I'd love to see this to be like look back to the 2020 NFL draft. You had
Yeah, we had some fun with that. Yeah.
yeah, you had four quarterbacks who are starters in the league now and are good starters in Burrow, Tua, Herbert, and Hurts. I would love to see three of these quarterbacks to be like good starters on teams, but personally, I don't really think that's going to happen. I think one of the three of these guys will be a good starter, and the other two will be backups within a couple years.
Yeah, I think like Richardson and I mean Will Levis. Like people go back and forth on Will Levis, and I actually saw something funny that this morning actually. So last night, Will Levis's odds in Vegas via DraftKings was to go first overall was plus 4,000.
Okay,
This morning, Will Levis's odds to go first overall. What do you think they were, Ty?
plus 5,000.
Plus 400 overnight.
That is nuts.
Overnight.
Are you serious?
So and supposedly it's stemming from some Reddit post
Oh,
because
God.
everything stems from a Reddit post. But
Pathetic. But
yeah, yeah.
Lachlan, he's really one of the quarterbacks in this draft that's completely overlooked now, particularly because Anthony Richardson has entered that conversation of who's going to be amongst the top drafted in terms of the quarterback position. But I mean, he did have a fantastic career with, or at least I should say last season with Kentucky. The Wildcats, not known by any means as being a football school, but they've had some pretty good seasons over the last couple of years in the SEC. And he's a quarterback who's got the job done with obviously not maybe the most fantastic core receivers coming to the University of Kentucky to play football compared to his counterparts in Stroud and obviously Bryce Young, but he's someone who's interesting. I'm not sure if he'll make it in the league by any means, but like it's one of these ones where I mean it's such a guessing game and no one knows.
Well, and the draft in any sport is just like we don't know what's gonna happen. Like it's where scouting is all about just like trying to see through that, but at the end of the day, you can't exactly predict the future.
For sure. And the only thing I could say probably that he has really going for him is that he did this at Kentucky. And you put him with a good coach in a good system with weapons, I think he could potentially be a star in this league and prove himself. It'll be a tough road, but I think he can do it, especially say he does go to someone like Indianapolis, where you have Pittman and Jonathan Taylor, you have a running game, you have an O-line, which is so important in this league for young quarterbacks.
Yeah, like like if like Will Levis goes, because I've been seeing mock drafts where he does go to Kentucky. Or no, he does go to Indianapolis.
Yeah, same colors.
Yeah, but the blue and white is messing with me a little. Yeah.
Exactly, but I think really interesting. But the quarterback situation is really interesting. But we both have, we might be wrong for a second year straight, we both have Bryce Young going number 1 to Carolina. That's what we have, okay? And Loch, to end on this episode, this will be like kind of our fantasy question of the week, which we haven't done in months. What team do you think has to have the best draft in here in terms of this impact that'll have on the future, where they are right now as an organization, to build on? Who needs to have the best draft in this one?
I know your answer, and I definitely don't disagree with you, but I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction here.
Okay.
I'm going to say the Arizona Cardinals.
Okay. Very interesting.
New GM, fired their coach in the offseason.
Yep.
Who, by the way, they recently signed to a 5-year extension. Because Cliff Kingsbury's gone.
Yep.
Budda Baker wants out. There's talk of DeAndre Hopkins wanting out. Who else knows how many other players on that team want out? Because 2 years ago, Ty, they were in the playoffs.
Yes.
And last year, they had just a terrible follow-up season. Probably the worst follow-up season you could have in the books.
That's a very good point. And they they were beating the Buffalo Bills 2 years ago. Like, do you remember games like that? Like, games would come down to the wire. They were winning.
Well, I mean, okay, in fairness, the Buffalo Bills game, that was a incredible Hail Mary.
For sure, but the point is they were in games like that, and they were playing shootouts.
And then to see the performances of last year, it was abysmal. This franchise, and then they released obviously their new jerseys, which are horrible. I think that if the Cardinals can leverage some of their assets, like potentially Budda Baker and DeAndre Hopkins, I think they can use those at the draft as well. They had the 3rd overall pick. If they trade down for the 3rd overall pick and their new GM gives into some of the pressure there, then it could really, really hurt them. And then you're kind of leaving Kyler Murray on an island.
Great points. That's a great pick. They certainly do have to have a big draft. And I'm going to go with team a bit of a different direction than you in terms of a team that I think can win now. And what I mean by that is like actually be decent and compete in the NFL over the next 3 to 5 years. I'm going to go the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions are, in my opinion, they're one of my favorite NFL teams to watch because they hang in almost every game that they play in. And I love Dan Campbell as a coach. I think he's phenomenal. I think he's changed the culture there. Obviously, I love Detroit as a city. I think like they have one of the best sports fandom and cities for sports in the entirety of North America, and they deserve a winner. And I think Detroit has gotten significantly better. They got some fantastic receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think we see that Goff is actually a good quarterback and can do it both while he was with the Rams, but he can do it in Detroit as well. I think they got some exciting players, but most, like you mentioned too, something like they drafted, and arguably to some extent, you could say a mistake of drafting Okudah with the 3rd overall pick back in 2020.
At the time, that was not a mistake.
At the time, it wasn't a mistake, but I think that if they can even further draft 1, 2, or even 3 impactful players in this draft that can last, stay with the team, gel, good rookie core, very young team as well, not to mention Detroit, and under a fantastic coach like Dan Campbell, I think it's a really exciting prospect, and I think they could make themselves a serious team in the NFL if they draft well in the next 3 to 5 years, and potentially even contend as early as next year for the NFC North. And I sincerely, because Rodgers is gone, and Minnesota's a bit of a toss-up next year, and God knows what's going on in Chicago sometimes. So I think it's plausible. So interesting prospect there. Couple other big names in the draft we didn't talk about. Smith and Jigba, obviously. Will Anderson, fantastic player.
I look for Smith and Jigba to go potentially to Green Bay.
That would be very interesting. By the way, we can talk about Green Bay. Jordan Love, interesting prospect being on that team. He had a good stint when he had to come in last year against Philadelphia, actually. I mean,
he's been in the wings for like 4 years.
Yeah, he had
3 years.
He's ready out of, I think, Utah, right? I think he was out of Utah. And one thing I want to mention, too, before we end off is this mock draft had Michael Mayer of Notre Dame, tight end Notre Dame, who broke the all-time touchdowns record by a tight end at the school there.
You saw him firsthand a couple times last year as well.
Yeah, and he's just absolutely fantastic. People have him dropping to the 2nd round in this, which I think is absolutely pathetic. He is such a big, strong. He is like a Mark Andrews in many ways, very comparable to a Mark Andrews. I don't think he shouldn't drop that far. I would love to see the Chargers pick him. Another name that's floating around, Bijan Robinson out of the University of Texas. That's a very interesting one as well. I think he's going to be a good NFL running back. I do. I think he's like a better version of Najee Harris, in my opinion.
Well, Ty, we know one thing. No GM will ever have a better draft day than Sonny Weaver in the movie Draft Day from 2014. I just had to throw that out because it's a joke. It's a running joke with Ty and I for a number of years now, probably like close to 5 years.
Yeah. Draft Day is maybe the worst movie ever made.
Yeah, the most unrealistic movie.
Yeah.
There's so many good. Yeah.
Give me David Putney, the punt returner, because I feel like it in all my first round picks, the draft picks back. just a pathetic movie in so many ways. I think it's Kevin Costner was the actor in that one. Rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman was in that. He played one of the running backs being drafted.
He was also he actually put up a good performance in that movie. Again, rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman. But
fantastic actor. I mean,
but we love to rip on that movie. We love to rip on that movie.
It's just some of the logic and just pure crap that just would never happen in the NFL. Exciting to watch, I guess. Plenty of good clips on YouTube Shorts, I guess. So that's pretty funny stuff. But guys, that does it for this episode. Hopefully we'll be back within the next week or a couple weeks to break down the NFL draft for you guys and some other stuff as well, and look forward, hopefully before our season ends, in-person episode. We'll be at home or and something like that, so one where both of us are back together. But we can recap free agency and the draft for you, and I thought it was a good one, Lachlan. First one back in a while.
Yeah, it felt good to be back, share some stories, talk a little bit, give you guys a little bit of an update that we're still kicking around.
Yep, absolutely. So fantastic, and make sure to stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy the NFL draft this Thursday. Take care, guys.